A counter-terrorism policy was part of the agenda at this week's EU summit in Brussels. European Union leaders met for the first time since last month's terror attacks in France, where Islamic gunmen killed 17 people at the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo and a kosher grocery store. CCTV's Jack Barton joins us now from Brussels. And Jack, what were the main proposals that came out of this meeting?
Well, the leaders of all 28 EU countries unanimously agreed on 3 areas of legislation that they have proposed. One is to collect the passenger flight lists right across Europe, to share that information not just carrying the names of the people on those itineraries, but also their seat number, payment details, other such areas of information, and to share those with all agencies across Europe, with some civil liberty protections enshrined within that legislation. The main aim there is to stop EU citizens from travelling to countries like Syria to engage in extremist activities there, to join up with groups like the Islamic State, also fighting in Iraq. If they do so, it is to intercept them at the borders when they return. The second piece of legislation also follows on from that. They want to strengthen border controls on the external EU border controls, but not the internal border controls in Schengen. Those are to remain untouched. They want to do things like enforce passport checks. At the moment, only about 30% of passports are being checked to see if they are fake or lost or counterfeited, and they want to raise that to about 100%. On top of that, they want internet content or internet sites which promote extremism to be taken down. That may end up being one of the most controversial aspects of all this legislation, but those are the 3 main areas where all the leaders have agreed.
Jack, that proposal to share airline passenger information, that has been tried before by the European Union. It was rejected. Do the European Union leaders feel that now it will work?
No, there is a sense. Britain already has this legislation in place. It is also not in the Schengen area, though. But other European Union countries were pursuing this a few years ago. They did put it to the European Parliament, but the Civil Liberties Committee of the European Parliament rejected that legislation at the time. Since then, we've had the Edward Snowden allegations, or the Edward Snowden leaks on the NSA, really fully come to light. There's been an enormous backlash here in Europe against data collection, all sorts of digital surveillance. Those issues are really combined here. It has caused an enormous backlash. Politicians know they have to be very careful when they craft this legislation to make it acceptable to civil rights groups here, to the public in general. But that's exactly what they are doing. Some governments more so than others, like Finland, saying that at every step along the way, they have to ensure that this legislation, it has the intended purpose of stopping terrorism within Europe, but it's not used 1 inch beyond that. So they're being very careful about that. They want to craft legislation that they are fairly confident will pass.
And Jack, as I understand it, these are proposals. They have to go through some kind of legislative or legal process before they can be implemented. What is that process?
Well, that's right. It has to be presented to the European Parliament. The European Parliament President, Martin Schulz, has made it very clear that when the Parliament looks at these proposals, there will be what he calls a number of red lines. Red lines that, if they are crossed, he believes that what he described as the values of Western democracy will be under threat. So they can't go too far. But having said that, most of the countries have shaped this legislation with those red lines in mind. So this has really been a collaborative effort. They have drafted these new proposals, but they have done so in the way that is within the boundaries of what the Parliament wants, hoping that the Parliament will accept it. We already know on one issue, and that is on the passenger list, that the Parliament will accept that. It's already had a vote, and the vast majority said that legislation will be approved, but only as long as it contains those guarantees to make sure there are no abuses along with that data collection.
Thanks, Jack. That's CCTV's Jack Barton talking to us from Brussels.